All right, we are back with another episode of the Hail Call. I'm joined this week with Matt, Teddy, and our guest this week is Mr. Michael. Jesus, let's start this over. Not
Jesus
Michael.
Christ, Mike.
Micah. I was literally reading it too.
All right.
All right, we are back with another episode of the Hail Call. I'm joined this week with Teddy and Matt, and we're joined this week with our guest, Micah Canapp. Micah, how's it going today?
Good. How's it going, guys?
Good. And you are the owner of Chesapeake Fowl Kennels. That's correct?
That is correct.
I got all of it pronounced right. Perfect. And you're located in Maryland, right?
That's right.
With these other two Yahoos?
Yeah, you're outnumbered here.
I guess so. I guess so. Well, before we get started, Micah, with some dog training questions, it's kind of going to be the focus of this week's podcast. But we also had Teddy, who was at a huge event, worldly renowned. He was at the National Outdoor Show
National
this past
event.
weekend. Yeah, national event, like huge.
Very true.
Yeah, Teddy, how did that event go?
So I was at.
This is a big deal over there.
Oh yeah. And there've been some changes, but this contest has been going on for a long time. But for those that don't know, I was at a goose and duck calling contest and turkey calling contest. It had 3 different age groups, but this is actually a sideshow because it is the home of the world champion muskrat skinning contest. And these guys come and travel from all over the country to compete in this world muskrat skinning contest. So when I say all over the country, I mainly mean Louisiana. And they get together, and it's been going on since 1938, how long that this muskrat skinning contest is going. And there has been a particular family that's been winning for a long time. But this contest and this show is, you're driving through National Wildlife Refuge for 5, maybe 6 miles of nothing but marsh, water, and then all of a sudden, elementary school pretty much pops out of nowhere. And it is just, it is some down neck stuff, man. It is, I don't know. I love this show. It's one of my favorite shows. I've been going to it for a long time. It's awesome.
How many people go to this deal?
I have no clue. I don't even want to guess.
I mean, are we talking hundreds?
Yeah, you're probably talking a couple thousand.
Okay.
Throughout the day, because people are trucked in and out all day long, and it's.
I mean, I kind of joked a little bit about this giant event, but I mean, there's a couple thousand people that are going through there, so it's not like it's a small deal where you got 150 people walking around and 7 guys are skinning scrats.
No, it's a bigger deal. Like the whole show goes on during the day, and then at 7 o'clock they pretty much shut the whole place down, and everyone goes to the main show, and that's where like the trot line baiting goes, and that's where they give out the trophies for the log sawing, and that's where they start the beginner, the intermediate, and the senior division, and the women's division of the muskrat skinning, and it's that is their main attraction. That is their deal. But the calling contest has been going on for decades, and it's, I described it on the last podcast, and not much has changed at all, but it's still a lot of fun to go down there. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen.
It's actually funny because I didn't realize it till this year, but I guess you can call it like a sister contest or sister festival or something. But down in Louisiana, in Cameron Parish, there is the Louisiana Fur and Wildlife Festival. And apparently these two contests and festivals are like tied together in history of fur and wildlife and skinning. And I was there last year just by like chance. I was in Louisiana hunting, and this was going on. I went with a client of mine, and the way that you described the contest up here, Teddy, is very similar to the way the contest was run down there too. There was no light. Your cue to start calling was 3, 2, 1, go.
Yep. No warm up.
No warm up. And
Nope.
the judges, there's a duck calling, snow goose calling, and speck calling contest. And the judges panel was very, very strong. I was a judge. I don't know how I got picked to be a judge. I've never blown a spec call. I don't know before I went down there, I have no idea what a spec sounds like. But damn straight I judged it. So the integrity of that contest might have been anyway. But yeah, so
What does, and I don't know if you said it, Teddy, or mentioned it before, what does a person win if you win the muskrat skinning championship?
I tried to find that out. I could not find out what the prize package is on the muskrat skin.
I mean,
I
is it
know
like
that
a
if you
legit
win-
package, or is it like you have won the title of being?
Oh no, it's a legit package, and they have sponsors and stuff for the contest. But I imagine it's probably like a check and a trophy type of deal,
Okay.
because that's what they give out for everything. Like if you win the duck or the goose, or actually if you win any contest juniors and above, you get the same amount. First place
Okay.
gets a nice trophy and a $50 check. Second place gets a trophy. Third place gets a trophy. Everybody else gets a nice try.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean it's I don't know, it's cool. It's
I
all
was
sorts of
just
stuff.
I was just curious, not necessarily because of the size
Mike,
of the
you
event,
would do
but-
good in this contest because they also have another contest for you, which is goose without a call.
Oh, okay.
They have duck, goose, and turkey both with calls and without.
do you have
And
results of the duck and goose, Ted?
I do. Yep. Let's see. So I can give you some of the contests. I can't remember the juniors on exactly who won what because, to be honest with you, I know Vance Price the third won several of the beginner levels, as in like young kids. I don't know what the age brackets are. Then the junior levels, I'm not entirely sure who won. I know that for with the call for the duck, Vance Price the second won, and then second place was Dave Bloodsworth. Third place was Bobby Heim,
Okay.
and then Goose with a call. I think duck with a call. I think John Taylor won again, or duck without a call. John Taylor won. Could be wrong about that. But then Goose with a call was Bobby won the Goose. I was second. Seth Hampton was third. And then Turkey with a call. All I've got is first and third. And I can't remember who was second. Or no, it was Josh Taylor won the Turkey, which is John's son. Then John Casey. Then Justin Blevins. Turkey with a call. It's pretty much the only results that I've got.
Is there like a routine that you guys do? Do you guys like for your goose calling? Do you just blow your normal routine?
No, I don't have a routine, man. It's you just go up there and try and sound like geese and do the best that
Oh,
you can.
okay. So it's more of like a lot. You're just trying to sound like live geese.
Yeah, but it's not like I wouldn't say you're gonna. I wouldn't bring any props or anything out there. Although I say that props won the duck calling contest last year, but
What kind of props?
that is private information. I don't know if I want to give that out, Mike.
Okay. Well, I'm
Okay,
just
so
curious.
I'll
like,
give it out.
I'm just,
Dave Bloodsworth, who didn't do it this year, but he won the duck calling last year because at the end of his duck calling routine, he took some of those snaps, those pop things,
oh, yeah.
and threw them on the ground like they were shotgun blasts.
I gotcha. Well, I mean, so like that's a prop, but like they do that in like the turkey calling competitions.
Yeah, with the
They
balloons
have
and stuff.
they have like they have. I mean, I've seen guys do like a foam cup on the end of like a bat.
Mhm.
And they basically like give you, I don't know, I guess I don't know what they call it because I don't follow turkey calling that close. But they basically do like you're calling in a bird where like you're yelping and they like do the gobbling and it sounds like the turkey's getting closer. And then it's like they'll boom, like they'll, whatever, make like a shot. And then one of them will have a wing and they have like leaves and stuff up there. And it'll be like boom. So it sounds like the turkey flopping on. I mean, I saw that and I was like, this is a real thing. Like I could get into this.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like that. I mean, you don't know what the judges are looking for. There's no real structure, or it doesn't really have a name. It's called the duck calling contest, and the goose calling contest is duck with a call, goose with a call. So like you just go up there and blow your call.
It's straightforward then.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, there's a little bit of strategy to it, obviously, But I wouldn't recommend going up there and ringing a duck call.
Sure.
But is what it is. It's like I said, it takes out. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And there's always a lot of trash talking that goes on and bragging about it. Like I won't hear the end of Bobby beating me for another year.
Right.
Well, it's
Yeah.
at the world-renowned National Outdoor Show. Can you blame him?
No, I don't blame him. It's the toughest contest to win.
Yeah. Well, good.
For
That sounds
sure.
like a good time.
Oh, it was a blast, man. Yeah, and you've got these girls and like Miss National Outdoors, and like you've got a women's division, and they're skinning muskrats in like 8 seconds. It's just awesome to see.
Okay. That's pretty fast. 8 seconds is pretty fast.
I mean, yeah, I would think so.
Awesome.
And they're just carrying dead muskrats down the hall, like it's just
I suppose.
no big
If
deal.
you don't have a dead muskrat, you're looked at funny.
Yeah,
Right.
you can try it there. They sell tastes of muskrat. I think it's like $2 a cup.
They what?
You can eat the muskrat. They sell it there at
I
the
have-
school.
Yeah, I saw
Have
that
you
on the
tried it?
program. Fresh local
have.
muskrat.
Is it good?
No, it's not.
So the reason I ask is I have actually heard from people that muskrat is one of their favorite meats to eat.
I would never go to a restaurant recommendation from
At
someone
least-
who said that.
At least not the one that you tried was not great.
I tried the one at the show, and
Which you
I mean,
would
I'm
think
sure some
you
people
would think
love it.
if they're hosting the World Championship muskrat skinning contest. That
Isn't there a
you-
muskrat cooking contest?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
show.
Yeah.
I mean,
that
there's,
you- okay, well,
but just
I mean,
wasn't for me. I mean,
No
there's
shortage of contests at this show.
no,
You got log sawing, you've got oyster shucking, trot line baiting, duck and goose calling.
I could get into this event.
skin.
Pole skinning, where they
pole
get the
skinning,
bark off
like-
the
Yeah, they've
Oh,
got. I got a whole list.
Different kind of pole skinning than I think you were talking about, man.
That's after 7 p.m. when they shut everything else down.
Get your
Yeah.
mind out
Once
of
it
the
gets
gutter.
dark. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got raccoon skinning, trap setting, oyster shucking, old time muskrat skinning. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on.
Mike, you're gonna have to book 2 flights to Maryland.
I'm thinking about it. To be honest, that sounds like one of the funner events I've been to.
It's
Lots of
it's a
stuff to
blast.
do.
Like we usually get done with the calling contest, go out to dinner, and then go back to the show and watch like the finals of the skinning contest.
That'd be awesome to just go to a contest that I am not competing in. I don't know.
Oh, you would compete in the calling contest.
Yeah, you just
Oh,
wouldn't
right,
take
but I'm-
yourself
right.
seriously.
But I'm not gonna it's not gonna be like Saturday night in Easton.
Like
I'm gonna
months
show
of
up.
preparation.
I'm gonna show up to this thing where
You know,
where
I
I'm
hate
like-
to say it, but like that contest is some of the most fun I have on stage, compared to any other contest.
Because it's no pressure.
I mean, I guess but it's just reminds me that calling contests can be fun. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to say, but it's true. Like that contest is just a blast.
Yeah, and just a funny tidbit from my end, I actually used to compete way back when.
Oh hell yeah!
Okay.
So,
You'll fit right
not with
in.
not with any rapport of high achievements or anything. I think maybe I got a 7th or 8th out of 20 some folks in the
Okay.
in the field, but yeah, mainly goose.
Okay. Nice.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So let's transition away from contest calling so we can actually talk to the guest and why he's on the program tonight. All right. So Micah, you've been in business since 22 with this Chesapeake Fowl Kennels, but how long have you really been training dogs?
I've been involved with dogs and working with dogs since right around 16, 17, and the middle school, beginning of high school. We had some upland dogs growing up. My family was big into doing that, and that's kind of where I got my feet wet in general with just the working dogs side of things.
Gotcha. And so you just you started this business and then it just kind of starting to take off, or you just love it so much? What's going on? Tell us a little bit about Chesapeake Fowl Kennels.
Sure, sure. So after having some of the family dogs, getting a chance to work a little bit with them, gaining some interest, and hey, I'd love to do this myself with my own personal dog. Get out of high school and get my first Chessie. I always wanted to get a breed that, to me, I didn't know an extreme ton about them at the time, but I researched a bunch and I wanted something for the cold weather here in Maryland. The icy conditions, just downright cold, cold weather. Those dogs known for their oils in the coat, great coats, thick coats to shed that water off and stuff. So I got my first male Chessie, and I said I wanted to build something up that I could take out hunting with me and be able to do everything from just seeing a bird that went down to sending them out on blind retrieves, being able to direct them to get to the bird wherever it was at. And that's kind of what led me into getting into this, taking him out with me and hunting with some others, meeting some other folks, and just hearing from them like, "Hey, man, you have a downright awesome dog. Did you send him out? And I'm like, I worked with him. I built him from basically the ground up from a pup, and they were like, man, like that's awesome. So I didn't really at that specific time think a ton about it until people started like asking me questions, and they're like, would you be interested in just help me out with my dog? I just have some little things that I'm working through, but I've been looking or following this, and the more just basically friends that I helped out with their dogs, they're like, man, you really should look into helping others out. You've been a huge, tremendous help to us, and you obviously know what you're doing. So that
Hmm.
was kind of where that developed. The whole Chesapeake Fowl Kennels, and I wanted something in that name that kind of touched on the roots of everything, which were Chesapeake's, and kind of felt like that all kind of tied together with Chesapeake Fowl being that running Chessies and working with Chessies mainly, but I'll do any breed, but doing it
That's
all
what
in the Chesapeake Bay. So
that's what I was just going to ask. Do you primarily do Chessies or do you do Labs and other retrievers?
I'll do any type of working dog actually, but I find myself working with a bunch of Chessies because a lot of the bigger named and bigger operations where you have 15, 20 dog kennels, the Chessies, not always, but a handful of the Chesapeakes just take a little bit more time, a little more finesse. You need to build something up for them to feel that trust with you. Where if they're with a pro trainer that has set deadlines, these dogs are through obedience in 3 to 4 weeks, getting into more formal stuff, starting the force fetch, that kind of stuff. I think that's where you hear that term like washout from folks. It's
Sure.
not that they're a washout, it's just they just don't fit that timeline for that specific trainer, right? They got 15, 20 other dogs. They're trying to give everybody an equal product. And for me,
Yeah,
I focus on the lower amount of dogs specifically so I can give that extra needed time.
sure. I mean, I've heard that term, people saying like, oh, that this dog was, a washout or whatever. But I mean, it's a good point. Like if a trainer is on a deadline to get a dog from point A to point B, and a dog is taking longer than what their timeline allows, it kind of makes it hard for them to stick with that one and keep going with it. You know what I mean? If they're and some people, if they're like raising and selling, started dogs and finished dogs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and I will say 100% that breeding does play a huge part, right? So, a lot of your labs you'll see specifically too, and like the hunt tests and the trials, like your field trials, you'll see a lot of black labs. And folks have really put a focus to breeding a specific style of dog for that venue, right? For that discipline. The Chesties, they were, and it's gotten a lot better. I've had the opportunity and really seen some really nice Chesties, but the focus has now been better to, get really quality dogs put together, paired together for, being able to get out there in those conditions and hunt, and additionally be able to play those hunt test field trial games.
So you're saying hunt test, field trial. Like, I mean, I've never been to one, never been around it. I see people, go to them all the time, and it looks like almost an addiction. Can you give us like a little bit of a background on what that is and why it's important for a dog?
Sure, sure. I think for myself, what started off as, well, man, I'm not really doing a whole lot outside of hunting season. Obviously I want to keep continuing training with my dog, etc. Led me into getting together with folks and doing some training, and they're like running hunt tests, and I'm just like, oh, hunt tests, what's that? For me at that time, that was newer for me. And after learning a little bit more about it, I was like, yeah, sign me up. It keeps my dog fresh. I get to give them a little bit of a challenge. We're working for specific things. And starting off, at the beginner level, let's just go with AKC. Okay, so for a beginner level, your junior hunter is two individual marks on land, two individual marks on water, right? So you don't have to be, um, basically, you don't have to have a leash on the dog, but you're allowed to have a flat collar, okay? And you can hold the dog in the junior level. After that, you're required to have off leash obedience, so to speak, heel up to the starting line, those type things. But in a junior level, you're able to hold that dog. They give you your number or your say dog, and then you're allowed to release the dog to go get the mark. And obviously, you need to have some obedience, right? Because if the dog goes out there, grabs the bird, and then takes off, you're not going to be able to get a passing score to make it to the
Right.
the water series or to get that ribbon. So
Hmm. Gotcha. And so as you move up, you go from junior hunter to hunt test, hunt, and then to mass. Where does master hunter come in? And like, what's the overall goal here?
yeah, so the levels, beginner is what they call the junior level, junior hunter, which would be
Hmm.
like your started dog, a dog that's for the most part through formal obedience, probably some collar conditioning, some hold fetch work to some extent, basically able to deliver the bird back to hand somewhere up towards like the 80, 100-yard range. Then your next level would be what they call the senior hunter,
Hmm.
and that would be multiple double mark land, double mark water, in addition to a blind both on land and water. And then it's up to the judge's discretion, but you'll also have an honor and also a what they call a walk up. So when I'm coming out of that last holding blind up to the line, they can launch a bird on the process of, the dog and I walking up to that line. And the dog's required to, stay there. You get a sit whistle, or you can just verbally say sit to the dog. And then, they have to watch that second mark go down that, they'll be released to go get afterward.
Micah, explain some of these terms to people that don't know. So, like blinds, marks, all of that kind of stuff. Explain like the difference between like a blind retrieve and a marked retrieve.
Sure, sure. So A marked retrieve is anything that the dog can see, fall, go down. It's something visible. If you're in regards to a hunt test, it's something that they for sure seen go down, right? So in the junior, it's just single, single. In the senior level, you have a double, right? And that dog at that point in the senior level has to remember one of those birds since there was two that go off. And then going forward to that next level, the master, you would have three that the dog would then have to remember two of those three marks. But marks are anything that the dog can physically see go down. And then for a blind retrieve, that's where the dog, essentially, you work with that dog to build that trust to trust you to be able to get them to that bird, right? So that's anything that the dog can't see go down. Let's just say you're out hunting and you're on the water and you're on a shoreline blind, and you shot three birds and the dog only saw two go down. Well, that one bird that got further out that dog didn't see, that's going to end up being a blind retrieve. So anything that dog doesn't see, I'm going to have to send that dog out. And generally, some dogs you just send them on a line, they'll carry that line and just keep on going. But part of teaching all the mechanics of the blind is being able to, if it's close to a shoreline out in the water or another piece of land, and the bird's close to that land, the dog's fading off, let's just call it to the right. I can blow the whistle, dog turns around, looks at me, and I hold up my left hand and move it away from me and say over. Then that dog swims over towards that shoreline, and I'm able to guide that dog to go get the bird that originally started off dead smack in the middle of that water there, that kind of faded off with the current or wind.
Sure.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so
So obviously there's a lot that goes into this, and we can kind of move into like your approach to training and how you, because everybody's different, and there's, like I said, there's a lot that goes into it. But talk about kind of your approach from, you get a dog, like, you get a puppy, um, and to get to this level to where they're, call it, a junior test, they're ready for their junior test, like from getting this dog to that point, like obviously there's a lot that goes into it, but like what are like the steps of getting them there?
sure.
And talk about like,
So
now, like everybody is different, but like how you do it, I've seen because you helped me train my dog, but like you do it differently than, the next trainer and the next trainer. So like your approach to it.
sure. Yeah, so when I get a pup, obviously I do myself focus on pairings, especially for breeding. I like to see some parents that at least show a good track record, right? That have achieved master hunt titles or have a really good uh, paper trail of just being a great hunting dog. I look for good good components, right, that those dogs feature and have. So that's obviously a big part for me, right? The breeding for sure for me is the start. Okay, so I find that breeding that I like, the quality of things that they have in there, I get that pup. All right, so we get
So
the
wait a
pup
minute, hold
home.
on. Let me ask you a question on the breeding. So the breeding, you're going through bloodlines and you're going through lineage of, we're going to talk. I guess we're talking specifically about Chessies. Now, Chessies are all across the United States. Are you focusing on Chessies around this area, or are you like open to say, I don't know, something in Indiana or Ohio or something like that?
Yeah, so funny you say that because our female that we have, she's actually from Kansas. So, and
Right, a
part of
Chesapeake Bay Retriever from Kansas. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty wild. But yeah, sorry about that.
no, no, great question. I mean, when it comes to in general, I think there's a lot more array of, your labs and a lot of different, you know, quality bread. A lot of good ones for sure. But with the Chessies. it could be a 50-50 shot. And even with a great breeding, right, it can still be 50-50 that, you could get one that's an all-star or one that needs a little bit more coaching along and helping. But, at the end of the day, it's, it shows that there's potential for, those things, right? So,
Yeah.
but, so yeah, I'll get that dog home. And for me, I try to build a relationship, number one, with that dog, right? And starting off, obviously, that dog doesn't know a thing, but that 18, or I'm sorry, 8 week, right? 8 weeks old to 16 weeks old, that dog can absorb a ton of information. It doesn't have to be a lot of time spent, but broken up into a lot of small little segments of training, right? So people will be like, well, how long should I work with the dog? Well, I might work with the dog 4 or 5 different sessions throughout the day if I'm able, right? But it might only be for 3 or 4 minutes long. At a puppy stage, their minds are all over the place. So the more that you can keep them engaged, one is important. And the other thing is finding a motivator for that dog. And in the beginning, generally always is food. Not every single dog is, but at that age, it's just genetic component that that dog has to eat, right? So
Hmm. So foods are going to be their number one motivator.
to start with,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the thing that I like to do once I get that dog really, really in tune and working with me, engaged, really, really interested in just being around me, uh, the sooner that they do that, the sooner I'm going to start getting that schedule of reinforcement to that dog varied, right? So, in the very beginning, like everybody does the treat training, stuff like that, teach the dog sit, all kinds of the basic commands. Well, as soon as that dog starts showing me that they're doing the commands with me not offering, willingly doing the command almost reflexively, then I'm going to start varying that ratio of when I give them food and when I don't,
Hmm.
right? Because people are like, oh, well, the dog does a treat or the dog does the, sit or whatever command I ask because they know they're going to get a treat.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, you're right, they do, but
Yeah.
it's up to us to leave them questioning whether or not they're going to get the food or not. So when the dog starts really showing they understand the behavior, as soon as they do, I start changing it up right away. So I might do 2 or 3 commands, then I'll give them, food or whatnot. I might do one command, give them food, do 3 or 4 other commands, then reward them. So, and one of the things also that I do right away with a young puppy is besides, your basics like the potty training and the crate training 100%, right, is a huge one. You gotta get them dogs at a young age in the crates and just keep them comfortable in there because you just never know. It's always best to have them be overly confident in that scenario just for, if the vet, any of those type things, um, they don't have to stay there forever. For me personally, a personal preference of mine, all my dogs up till almost 2 years old, I keep them in the crate. Not all the time. It might just be overnight. It might be when I'm not working with them, but I allow, and every dog's a little different. Some dogs that might not be as, high energy level wise, I can give them a little bit more, a little more freedom and start increasing that.
Hmm.
But another thing I like to incorporate in early on is markers. Okay, so for me, marker training, and maybe Mike, from the wife, you might be able to relate or chime in a little bit. I know they're
Hmm.
used a lot in just regular obedience, rally, agility, but I'm
Yep.
I'm huge on markers. So
Like a
I
clicker.
I teach well, a clicker can be used to be a marker, correct? But for me, I use mainly verbal markers. So I'll have a marker for reward. Okay, for me, that's yes. And my yes means to come to me for reward. All right. And
Right.
then I'll have a marker that lets the dog know wrong answer. So that's no. And those things are both what are called um, conditioned. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word for a second there. Conditioned reinforcers. Okay. So I do yes, followed by reward from me, 100 times, let's say, right? When I go outside now with that dog and I just say yes, the dog could be, down 50, 60 yards away. They turn around and run right back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that, right?
Because they want
Right.
that treat. They want that
Yeah,
reward.
typically followed by reward. Yeah. You marked the
Yeah,
good
and
behavior.
right, exactly. And so the markers are extremely huge for me, right? And as the dog progresses and gets a little older, I basically roll all of that into some form of, a toy, right? Ball on a string. I use a lot of tug toys, which like a tug, which you don't hear many people at all in the retriever community talking about or using. There's a few that are out there, but you know, I do a lot of my obedience through just a good game of tug. And I'll work with the dog. They'll be tugging away, tugging away. That's also how I teach the release, like a drop or an out. Um, I'll teach, all the formal commands in that. And then I also will go right back through that same structured play is what I call it,
Hmm.
for like your collar conditioning and stuff like that. And on top of that, using those markers, is huge. There, like I said, that 8 to 16 week range. I'm not doing anything, obviously, with any type of, um, you know, equipment at that point in time, but really getting those markers and stuff established so that way when I get to the point of then showing those dog what's asked, through just a flat collar and a leash, all that stuff will have meaning to the dog, in that case.
Well, I think like playing with the dog too just helps build a relationship with the dog. You know what I mean? Like you get like it gets more personal for the dog as well, which is kind of what I think a lot of people lose sight of when they're trying to train a dog. They want their dog to be a machine. And I think people lose sight of, and I try to explain it to people too when they talk about getting a dog. It's like you need to understand, and I mean, this is my opinion. Yeah, your dog can be used as a tool, but your hunting season might only be 60 days out of the year. For the other 300 days, you have to live with that dog. So it's like, think of how you want to train that dog. Do you want it to be it's in the crate, and when it's out of the crate, it's nothing but drive, 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 go crazy, get that bird at no matter what the costs are, and then come back and just be an absolute maniac in the house, knocking everything down because your dog's crazy, and then immediately back in the crate? Or would you rather have a dog that likes to play, is more obedient, understands its name? I don't think I don't think people realize, like, as somebody who is guided and people that want to bring their dog, I would say maybe half of the dogs that I've had come out and hunt with us, maybe half even acknowledge what their name is once they get out there. Like you shouldn't have to yell your dog's name 30 times to get it to listen, right? But I think a
Yep.
lot of people who are like listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about. Like
Oh yeah,
you have a dog that's like, oh, they've been trained, they've been at the trainer. It's like, well, have they been trained to just be all drive? I mean, having drive is good because we don't want our dog to like lollygag going to get a bird, but we also need to be able to live with this dog and not have it like just be psycho all the time too. And
absolutely.
I think playing with a dog a lot of times just helps them connect with you. They trust you, like they think of you more as a friend than than their boss, right? Than that guy that tells me what to do and I have to do it or else I'm going to get lit up.
Well, do you teach drive in a dog,
Yeah, you can
or
definitely
should I say, can you teach drive in a dog?
you build you kind of bring that out, so to speak, in the dog. There might be a dog that is a little, let's just say, call it lower, so to speak, on the drive, right? You can use, like birds with the young dog, like birds to spark that interest and that chase for, that predatory instinct and stuff like that. But really, actually, too, a lot of how I do that play within the training facilitates all that for the dog, right? So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. I'm sure Mike, you may have a flirt pole, for instance, right? With a young dog, that's just showing a little bit of chase and catch essentially to that dog. It's like a fishing rod, right? With a little toy on the end of it. And
Hmm.
I'll let the dog get close to it and then I pull it away real fast, right? So then out of the dog's just curiosity, they're like, oh, let me get a little closer, try to get it. And then, then I start just chasing the dog's chasing me around. I'm moving it back and forth, and then I'll let the dog get it. And then I'll kind of pull at him a little bit with it, and he's trying to pull back, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I have your attention,
Hmm.
right? So everything that I teach as far as the obedience and Mike, you were talking about the dogs that are just unruly. Well, uh, I've spoken with some folks that are just like, man, my dog just doesn't turn off, and I'm just like, well, you have to show it how.
Right.
you know and part of what I do in that structured play is we'll be really getting into some tug, or the dog's we're pulling he's pulling at the ball on the string, and then I just say drop, all done. And to my dogs, all done means we're taking a break in the game.
Hmm.
So, and then I can throttle that back up again. I can say, you ready? And for my dogs, if I say that, that cues them to be like, oh, we're getting ready to do some cool shit.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
everything that we do, and if I do a training session outside, right, we have a real good training session. When I come back in the house, I try to show and foster just cool, calm, and collected for the dog inside the home, right? So, you know, as the dog's younger, it might just be just some crate time. And as the dog starts to learn some more boundaries and some rules, I might have a place board, like a bed that's out in the living room, and I have a little 8-inch tether that I have on an eyelet on my wall, and then I just put a regular flat collar on the dog, and I put them on that, and they just learn by a little bit of pressure that when they're laying down on that bed, there's no type of annoyance, nothing, and essentially that's the beginning teachings of that negative reinforcement, right? The slightest little form of pressure there.
Hmm.
Micah, talk about pressure on and pressure off in terms of training. Um, I know in terms of dog training, that's a big, a big component of it. And you've taught me, dogs learn, reinforcements and stuff by pressure. And you've taught me like, pressure on and pressure off. So talk a little bit about that and how that goes into, day-to-day training.
Sure. Yeah, so in regards to the pressure piece, everything for the most part that I'm teaching from a obedience or command standpoint, I always try to show the dog with positive reinforcement, right? So that's the addition to, that command, some sort of reinforcement, whether it's food or with the toy, and that's, obviously where those markers come in well, which, I could ask for the dog to sit, and then I'm saying YES. So they sit, but as soon as they sit, then I say YES and they fly to me to get reward, right? So then it becomes like a game to the dog. Okay. So in those beginning stages, I'm really just making this dog feel like they're fearless, right? Um, Taking them everywhere, doing a bunch of different stuff, exposing them to a ton of different sounds, noises, using those markers to, reward for, you hear a loud noise. Well, guess what? That dog already from like basically out of the womb, one of the first things I'm showing is that marker, right? That yes, followed by reward. Something, loud goes off. Guess what? As soon as that happens, I'm going to say yes to the dog and then pay them for it. Then they're like, after, consistency of doing that, they're like, oh man, I just don't give a crap about nothing. And you build that dog up environmentally as well. Um, those are forms of pressure as well. But in regards to pressure on, pressure off, once the dog has an understanding of the command, then we're going to start bringing in that component of that negative reinforcement. Okay, right? So lots of different ways that you can incorporate that in. Generally, I usually start off with some sort of like a slip chain or a pinch collar, right? Every dog is a little different, so you have to find what works for that specific dog, okay? Sometimes I may even have to just do some dogs with a flat collar and a regular leash, right? And I might have to have the dog sit remotely away from me. Let's say we're working on a sit, okay? So the dog sits away from me, and then I call the dog to me, and then for them to sit, I'm going to say sit, but then I'm going to take like a step or two toward the dog, right? That there is a form of pressure, spatial pressure. So for that specific dog, that might be just enough to start with, and then I can then go to that slip chain at some point, right? Every dog views pressure differently, and the amount of pressure and how you alter that per dog can vary tremendously.
Hmm. Um, so before I go into this next thing, I'm gonna I got a couple of questions here, and it's gonna be just like firing off questions left and right. So I'm trying, and
All right.
instead of trying to worry about like transitions and all that bullshit that we try to figure out and we're terrible at, I'm just gonna fire off some of these questions. Right. So you answered my first one with, Chesapeake versus Lab, but my next question is, all right, here's a scenario. You got a guy who hunts mostly marshes, right? Small little guts, stuff that, is tight, tall reeds, blah, blah, blah. What do you do in the scenario where you're hunting a teal gut and you've got 6 or 7 birds down in reeds, and as soon as that dog goes in the reeds, your casting is worth fuck all?
Sure. Well, for the most part, that's where you're just the genetics, right? The nature of the dog kicks in, right? It's
Instincts,
natural
right?
instincts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Now, don't get me wrong, there's things that you can practice at home or, in the field, like kind of like an upland field, stuff like that, where you can teach the dog a cue, right? Like hunt it up or find it, right? So that teaches the dog, and you want to start with small wins, right? Because those small wins then compound up for those bigger wins, starting off with like a 20 or 30 yard, almost like a track, right? Essentially, where you
Yeah.
place something out there in the higher grass and you just walk out there with the dog. Let's just say the dog's e-collar trained and we're off leash, right? And we're walking out there, and then I just say, hunt it up. And I'm setting the dog up though for success because it's something that I can control at that portion. But doing things like that, then when you get in that scenario, like you're saying, that dog already, he might not have seen every single one go down, so to speak, but you're like, hey, hunt it up.
Good
And,
luck. Right.
he's gonna, yeah,
So you're basically trying to emphasize using their nose, right? Like, is that what you're
for
saying?
sure. Yes, 100%.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I think, from what I've seen, like the few good dogs that I've hunted over, um, I think you can sometimes have a dog that's too reliant on commands, where when you send them on a blind, they'll run around, and if they can't find the bird right away, they'll just sit down with no whistle and look at you like, tell me where to go so I can find it.
Definitely.
And sometimes, like if you don't have a real hard mark on it, like where the bird is, it might be where you think it is, and the dog's 300 yards away. You have to like trust that they're going to just hunt. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have to look. So one of the best dogs I've ever hunted with was Asher Tolliver's dog, and he has a great dog, Simba. But sometimes, like when we were in Texas, he'd run that dog out, and sometimes it would it's so wound up because it's doing retrieve after retrieve after retrieve. It's just loving life because you got you're shooting 100 birds a day. But sometimes it would run out there, and then it's like, just tell me where to go. Just tell me where to go. You know what I mean? Like they'll run and they'll look, and if they're not right on, it's like, and he's trying to send it back farther. The dog will like run a little bit, it'll zigzag, and then it'll stop and look like, where is it? What do you want me to do? You know what I mean? So I think for sure, and I've seen that with other dogs as well. Sometimes when like if they get confused, a lot of times some dogs I feel like forget to use their instincts and to just hunt. Like
Sure.
use their nose.
Yeah,
They almost get too reliant on like you're just gonna tell me where to go until I find it. I don't have
That was literally my next question, Mike. Can dogs be too reliant on their handler as compared to losing the actual purpose of having a dog in the first place, which is that thing on the end of their snout?
right.
Like
100%.
that's the main reason that you would want a dog, especially in that situation that I portrayed. But you know, with the casting, you're not casting shit in 8 foot tall Phragmitis. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like you've got to, but training and that's kind of my scenario. If you've got a dog and you're a new dog owner and you know that you don't really want to do hunt tests, how important is it to teach them casting if that's the scenario that you hunt, say 90% of the time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, right? The first thing that comes to mind for me as a whole is just balance, right? You want to have a good balance. Now, I do think it's still important to have those tools in the toolbox for those what ifs or the just in case scenarios. But just like you said, Teddy, I mean, if that specific person with their dog is mainly only going to be doing, marsh hunting, stuff like that, etc., things where they're going to be in those higher grasses. I mean, maybe all the dog really needs to know is just back, right? So
Yeah,
go back in there and then hunt it up. So
yeah. Which leads me to my next question. Is force fetching worth it?
Well, okay, so let's do this first. I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think, or what's first things that come to mind for you guys when you hear those terms, right, for force fetch? Like the couple things that come to mind for you, or like the process of it, or the
Impl-
short version.
Implying pressure to get them to hold a object, bumper, duck, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my dog's force fetched, Micah. So I mean,
But my dog's not.
yeah,
Right, and it'll go grab a bird, bring it back, no problems, right? Or
Yep.
yeah, I mean, Dolly, she's force fetched, and she's my first dog. I really, I don't know the difference of, like I said, I don't have a dog that's not force fetched. I feel like, I feel like it's very necessary with her, and I was always told, like, I have a Chessie. Chessies are stubborn. You got to force fetch them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was told like force fetching is part of the process. It's how you teach them pressure. It's how you get them to cast. It's how you get them to do all this, that, and the other. And it's basically a building block to do everything necessary to get them to be, a top-notch gun dog. But then again, in the theory of the concept, and now again, I'm not a dog trainer, right? I just I got really lucky with mine, but the concept is you're applying pressure to get them to hold something in their mouth, right?
the biggest thing is for
I
the
guess I'm.
dog if
I
they
guess my main
if
question
they
is, can you explain force fetching?
sure, yeah, it's not a problem at all. I will add on to what you were saying. The biggest way that I look at the force fetch, right, is, and this might give it a different perspective for you guys, maybe Mike and Teddy. The biggest thing that I look at it as, it gives the dog a must key. Okay, so the dog knows the behavior, right? Just like I said before, basic obedience, all that stuff. The dog
Mm-hmm.
learns the command just through some form of positive reinforcement. Okay. Now, just like collar conditioning, is your dog Teddy collar conditioned or no? Nothing.
Yeah, he was originally collar conditioned, but I don't even turn the collar on anymore.
There you go. Okay. So, same concept, okay, for the force fetch. I want to show that dog that picture so that if for some odd reason, let's just say we're out hunting. I'll give you a scenario, right? My oldest dog, Moose, who's 8 now, we were hunting a blind, sorry, a water blind down in Lower Dorchester. We shot 2 geese. He went out, got the first one, came back. Went out to get the second one, and we thought both of them were stone cold dead, right? The
Mm-hmm.
goose was 100% come to life, turned around on him, tried to bite him on the head. tried to, honking his butt off. Well, Moose kind of went to turn around as if to come back in. And I said, no, fetch. He immediately turned around, grabbed the goose by the neck, and brought him in.
Right.
Right. So in that case, where that picture, I didn't show him that exact picture, right? You know what I mean? It's just having those tools to then help him, clear that up. Like, hey, hey, it's fetch. That's
Yeah.
it. It's not like I'm out to beat the dog down. I just want him to have that tool there, so that way, if for some reason that, you know, same thing with a wounded duck or a shot up duck that's real bad, and I've seen it multiple times in hunt tests, right, where a dog will go up to it and they're just like, oh, like what's this? I've never seen a duck this shot up, right, this badly shot up. It
Yeah.
just gives that it's already a known command. The dog's learned it, right? We've shown it and taught the dog through positive reinforcement. Then we've just layered that over, no different than collar conditioning to a command the dog already knows. And just like you said, right? I don't 90% of the time have to use it, but
Right.
it's there if needed to reinforce to that dog, hey, fetch.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I get the concept. It's just, I don't know. It just wasn't part of the step. I guess maybe I was lucky enough where I didn't have to, I didn't have to worry about that because I didn't see that as a problem. He wasn't letting it go in the beginning. But all right. So firing off random questions for you. So my next question is, what do you do about gun shy dogs?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this. Micah texted me about this
Wait,
earlier.
so you came off the whim with this one, Teddy, or
I've known a few people that have perfectly trained, great dogs, and as soon as you fire a gunshot, they turn into a cat.
sure. So, believe it or not, all right, I'm not trying to take any digs at anybody or anything, but when a dog is born, they do not come out of the womb gun shy. All
Yep.
right. There's somewhere along the lines. Now, don't get me wrong. There are dogs that aren't as, let's just call it environmentally strong as others, but then that's what takes more, just take your time and build that dog up, right? We're
Right.
not just going to just try to breeze through like, oh, we're going to go right through obedience, go right into doing formal yard work, this and that. We're going to take our time to make sure that that dog just feels like he's you know, King SHIT on Turd Island, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
You're setting them up
um,
for success. Yeah.
yeah, and that's part of when you get to that point where you're introducing forms of pressure to the dog. That's part of those building blocks in the beginning, right? We want to just build a extremely environmentally strong and confident dog to just be able to look to us, right, as as their handler, their leader, to pretty much be willing and able to do whatever we want them to do, right?
Yeah.
um so in regards to the gun shy stuff, a lot of it is mainly because people are in too much of a rush. The end of
Mm.
the day, I see it time in and time out. I've even had some folks where, worked with a dog, and I've shot multiple, hundreds of times around the dog, right? And then one of the things I really try to harp to folks is this dog this dog isn't just going to go right home and get right into like a six-man hunt, for ducks or geese, and everything's just going to go perfect the very first hunt, right? You
Yeah.
you want to gradually work that dog into the scene, right? Into the hunting scene. Obviously, I've shown the dog a ton of different pictures. We've ran from boat blinds, we've ran from, stationary blinds, stuff like that, where, the dog hears shots, there's something that goes down, he's going to go get it. Well, when you have six, seven guys and you're shooting three, four dozen geese,
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, someone calls me and they're like, "Man, I don't know, but this dog's gun shy now." And I'm like, "Well, explain to me what happened. Like what went on?" And then they were like, "Oh, well, And I'm like, I I try my best to stress to people, take your time. When
Yeah.
when it comes to
Introduce
the
a
gun
little bit at
related
a
stuff,
time.
take your time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A little bit
Absolutely.
goes a long way, right?
Yeah, and that's something where, back to those markers, right? Some of the ways that I'll formally introduce some of the gunshots and things like that. Obviously, it's all starting from a distance. Let's just say it's 100 yards, right? Or 120 yards. And I have someone that's way out in the field, shot, and then I throw like a little fun 5, 6 yard bumper. They go out, come right back, right? I'm showing that dog that something really good is happening for those shots, right? Some of the dogs that I worked with a GSP that, was extremely gun shy. We started off with in a distance, shot and throw, and we had to start off with just food. And then we really got some good results out of the dog when we had birds in the mix too, right? So that ended up being the one that sealed the deal for that dog. Just got fired up.
Yeah.
Um, for when they heard that shot, right? But it has to be something that follows that, let's call it that negative, okay? So for most dogs, not every dog, but generally, right? Let's just let's just say it's the shot, okay? The shot is the quote unquote negative. As soon as there's not a shot, that's almost like kind of like self-rewarding to the dog, right? It's similar to like collar pressure. If you were saying here to the dog and you tap the collar, as soon as that collar went off, then that's self-rewarding to the dog. And that negative reinforcement is very self-rewarding. So that's where you see a lot of your trainers, a lot more of your bigger named kennels, guys that have a handful of dogs on there. A lot of what they do is more so right into the beginnings of that negative reinforcement, which a lot of these higher drive and higher energy bred labs and stuff, it's not no big deal to them. But you have these other versatile style breeds, um, or just some lower sensitive dogs that just need a little extra time where you're building that up.
I mean, that definitely makes sense. Um, I just seen guys that, they'll have a brand new dog, they'll introduce them too soon. A big mistake that I've seen is if you got guys that get a new dog and they don't necessarily make the hunt about the dog for the first couple of years. You know what I mean? Like you
100%.
get a
Yep.
new dog, I feel like you've got to make it about that dog for that first year. Like you're not shooting a bunch. You know what I
Yep.
mean? You're there for the dog. So I don't know. I was just curious because that's the age old question is like, how do I get rid of gun dog or how do I get rid of gun shyness and how do I stop my dog from breaking? That's pretty much everything you see posted online,
Hmm.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the tough thing is like as a hunter, when we're starting a dog, we have to decide, are we willing to sacrifice some hunts so that this dog can learn,
Right.
right? And I mean, for me, I think I would have a hard time with it. And I think that's where you have a lot of guys rush into it. It's like, oh, we have a good hunt. I want to get my dog some retrieves. They kind of put their own needs ahead of the dogs. And then, like what you were saying, Micah, like you got guys that are going out, they're shooting a bunch of birds, ton of volleys. It's total chaos out there because everybody's yelling and screaming. Guys are running after birds. The dog's trying to run after a bird. There's 6 birds running, one's running out there, flap flying, running across the ground. 3 of them are belly up, kicking. I mean, it's just, there's decoys out, there's scent everywhere. I mean,
Mayhem.
it's just total
Yeah.
chaos,
Yeah.
right?
Mass chaos is what I like to call it. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually, like for a lot of people that don't hunt their dogs very much, they're taking them with because oh, it's going to be a whatever hunt. All of a sudden, all this stuff is going on. What is that teaching that dog? That
Yeah.
whenever I
Yep.
go hunting, it's total chaos every time. Like we sit here, we do nothing, and then all of a sudden, it's like total madness for however long.
Yep.
or the dog
Yeah.
goes on a bunch of slow hunts where it's like, okay, this is manageable. We shot a couple ducks. And then you go out on a good day where like there's ducks just everywhere. They're landing in the decoys. Like there's just so many variables. And I think it's hard as a hunter for a lot of people to be like, you know what? I'm not going to shoot today.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
the hard part. Like I'm not bringing my gun. I'm just going to run the dog. And you see that with a lot of really good trainers. Like sometimes you just have to put the gun down and focus on your dog. You have to quit calling and focus on your dog to
Well,
make sure
yeah, I
that your
mean,
dog
to
has
me,
some
it's like,
standards.
okay, you got to sacrifice in the short term to make it worth it in the long term,
Correct.
right? Like that's kind of what I see most dog guys and guys that get dogs. But then again, maybe that's the problem across the country because now these guys are equating, well, okay, I'll just spend the 30 grand, send my 8 week old puppy out to a dog trainer, and when I come back, he's a bam, finished product. I never have to miss it, never have to miss pulling the trigger. Right?
Yep.
That's just not how things operate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Here's another random theory that was told to me was, I had one good piece of advice and then a random theory, but this one was if you send your dog off to a dog trainer too young, then it's never actually working for you.
Mm.
Because it's imprinting on, like if you pick up a 8-week-old, 10-week-old puppy, you're not given a time to imprint on the actual person that's going to be living with it. What do you think about that thought process? Yay or nay, dog trainer?
Well, let me come back or throw this at you. So the dog that gets sent away, right? Let's say 6 months old. What was done with the dog that built the relationship besides just hanging out, laying on the couch, cuddles, making that dog think that, oh, you're confident to do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm asking. Is like, okay, are they sacrifice? Do you think? Well, I can't ask you that because you actually are a dog trainer. But I mean, are they sacrificing those imprintive, formative years for a young puppy, even at 6 months, by sending it to a dog trainer and expecting it to come back finished? Basically, is the dog going to listen to you better because you trained it versus the owner?
Nope. I think the biggest thing that lacks in that specific scenario that you say is that there's not enough time with the transfer from said
Mm,
trainer to the owner.
gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now that a dog that's, has spent a ton of time with a trainer, etc., is going to run way better than for that owner. If that owner, is good, is able to pick up on stuff quick and stuff like that, then yeah, they'll be okay. But that's what our job is supposed to be as trainers is to show the handler how to run the dog, you know, building on those fundamentals, you know, making it, the best thing ever for, that dog now coming back home working with you, you know, fostering that relationship. I mean, I do think that there's some things when the dog's younger that you can build on with the owner, but I mean, as far as like labs and stuff like that go, I mean, those suckers, they'll love up on every single body and do anything for anyone. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
do see a little bit more with different breeds, like the Chessies, for instance. What's
Yeah,
another one?
Chesapeakes are like historically outrageously loyal, right? Like that's
Yeah,
I just, specific, and that's part of the reason why you offer personal one-on-one consultations, right? Is because you want to make sure that extremely loyal dog is loyal to the actual owner, and that's what I'm assuming, right?
yeah, for the most part. I mean, I have worked with Chessies, just me and the dog, but the biggest thing there, right, just like we said earlier, is finding that motivator for the dog, right? I think the another issue that's just around or about is that, you know, let's just say for the Chessies, okay? the Chessies, they go to these trainers, right? And then for the most part, they're right into formal training, right? When I'm working with the dog, I might, and I'm upfront and honest right off the gate with the owners, right? When the handlers, I might spend 2, maybe even 3 weeks just literally playing with the dog, right? Like I was saying earlier, like ball on the string, tug, stuff like that, to
Yeah.
where now that dog's really seeking me out to do stuff. And then when I see that happening, and it's not necessarily that long, but I'm just giving a for instance,
Hmm.
I make that up front with everybody that I work with and, their dogs. But, I had a fox red lab that came to me very, very fear aggressive. Um, Never actually wanted to do anything, but the dog learned that when it growled and snarled in its crate, that it kept everyone at bay.
Hmm.
But when I took the dog in, I met with the gentleman and I noticed that she was absolutely batshit crazy for a lacrosse ball. I said, this will be easy. So literally the first 2 solid weeks, all we did was in my basement and then outside on I have like a 30-foot long leash that I just had on a flat collar. All we did was throw that lacrosse ball. Like I'd play with her in the basement. I'd just throw it
Yeah.
up like, 2 or 3 feet in the air. She'd like jump up and grab the thing and she'd wag her tail and go crazy. I'd throw it up again and same thing. And then I'm like, all right, now we're at a good point to start something. So then from there on, I mean, it was probably maybe 2, 3 weeks and totally good.
Hmm. So
I
you had to
needed
build
the.
that trust with that dog, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a case where that was a lab, but all she ever knew, what she felt like was the right answer, right? She was never shown or never told like, no, you can't do that. So for her, that's just what she thought was normal.
All right. I've got
Oh, you
four
want to talk
more.
about the breaking too? Yeah, I'd love
No,
to
no,
talk
no.
that
I
one.
I've talked to the breaking. To the end. I want to talk about whining.
Okay.
You got a dog so excited that it sees a bird and it's come, or it's sitting in there and it's just going fucking nuts trying to retrieve. Anything you can do about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, now you're going back, and now you're going to go against some of the old school methodology, right? And the thoughts on that, which a
Taking
lot.
drive out of a dog?
Yeah, well, one that, and two, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it and stuff like that, but basically, sending the dog without being steady, like young dog
Hmm.
early on, because they want to build that drive. Well, it depends on the dog.
Right.
If I have a dog that's 6-time grand national champion, field trial qualified all age, bred to another, qualified all age master hunter dog, and it's showing me right away that it can knock your socks off with its, drive,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna allow that dog to just go, I'm drive building. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
dog has enough already. And that's where you see that stuff start is those dogs early on that get a ton of marks or, you know, they're introducing another thing too. They're just going too quick into everything. Take the time. That dog could do a lot more things where, because of the drive, right? You can do a lot more reps on different things. Like I'd just be working on maybe recall or sending it to kennel, things like that, where I can challenge that dog to then hold like a kennel or place. And, if it pops up, I'm going to be like, no, walk over a little pop on like the leash and tell it kennel.
Hmm.
That dog is going to pick up on things a lot faster. Where essentially to me, if obviously the dog's going to get marks and they need marks, right? But the more you give that dog stuff like that, it's just going to fuel the fire. And that's where that stuff is created with a dog that already has extremely high levels of energy and drive, and in the sense of like what you're talking about, like when birds or stuff go down, you have to really throttle back to, okay, where am I starting to see this happen? Like when I work with some folks that are doing stuff for hunt tests and things like that, they get in the holding blind and they start whining. Nothing even has even gone off yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit of breeding for sure plays part, right? If like the mom or the dad was real whiny and stuff like that. There is some, I feel myself that there's definitely some correlation there within the breeding stuff. But I mean, if you have an overly pretty sound dog, stuff like that, a lot of that is just created with doing too much too soon. Right. And that dog almost has like an anxiety, so to speak, for what's next.
Would you
Yeah.
say that that's the same whine as like when you're just out hunting and there's no birds around, a dog that just sits there and whines the entire time? Or is that different?
Ugh.
Because to be honest,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily care if like if we just shot a bunch of birds and the dog is whining because it is wound up and wants to go out there. I don't mind
Sure.
that a fraction as much as a dog that in all the time that you're out there start to finish, like when you're in there waiting for the birds to start flying, the dog that is just whining the entire hunt. Like, because
Yep.
that can be pretty frustrating too, especially like if you're not shooting a lot. It's like,
And
okay,
the
now,
dog's just
yeah,
sitting
how
next to you
was,
going
yeah,
nuts.
yeah,
Yeah.
how was your hunt today? Well, I don't know. We hunted for 7 hours. It was cold out. The birds didn't really fly, and I had so and so's dog next to me that whined the entire time. And we shot one bird.
Oh,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
there's a difference, right? Can you train that whining out versus like just the wound up drive whining?
well,
Is
I
that
think
like
he's saying,
the
Mike.
right term?
I think he's saying that we're not training the whining out. I think we've already trained the whining in. Is that what you're
Sure.
saying?
Oh, in that case where you're in that hunt and stuff like that. Well, I'm sure at that point, that dog has probably done it in other cases, right? But a friend of mine always said that if there's something you don't like that you don't do anything about, it will over time just gradually get worse.
Sure.
Hmm.
Sure. Yeah. So I
So,
suppose if
like,
it's,
I have
I
a, and
mean,
I'm
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, if you have like a young dog that just kind of starts that whine a little bit and you just, yeah, and you don't do anything about it, now that dog is 5, it's probably going to whine the entire hunt because you didn't address it right away.
Yes.
It's kind of that,
Yep.
kind of that give an inch, they're going to take a mile kind of thing. Like if you don't do something to correct it right away, or in the early stages, I don't think it has to be that you hear a dog whine for the first time and you immediately like light it up, but you need to do
Right.
something about it where it's like, hey, we've been working on this a couple times. The dog is now sitting here whining, like could be in anticipation. And like you said, maybe that's something that we didn't correct, but we also built it in too. So like they're going at both ends of the rope.
Right. And I think that's another thing too that filters back into, when I'm working in that structured play, right, with the dog. If I have a dog that's way more high test, more energy, that kind of stuff, I want to really, really focus on showing that dog how to turn off, right? How to just be there and do nothing. Those things will
Yep.
really, really help set the dog up for those cases where, I might go out. Part of my training might be I might go out there, sitting at the training field, at the, make believe or, set up duck blind that I have on the pond. And, I might just sit there and quack, 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 call, shoot. That dog might get one retrieve. And, we're out there 20, 25 minutes. I'm going to start off, right? This is the same thing back to I'm going to start off small, right?
Hmm.
15, 20 minutes of the dog just pretty much doing nothing. And I'm going to build on that, especially if I'm working with someone and they're like, yeah, we're gonna primarily do hunting. So, okay, well, guess what? If you're in Maryland, and maybe Matt or Teddy could say otherwise, but if you're in Maryland, if you're shooting, a half dozen, 8 ducks in a morning, you're doing pretty good. So, a lot of the times that we're out there, we're just enjoying a nice cup of coffee and just hanging out with some friends. So
Yeah.
for that dog to see that picture of doing literally nothing is important for that gun dog.
That
Yeah,
makes
my
sense.
dog's gotten pretty good at doing a lot of nothing.
Um, all right, so I'm down to. So you're talking driving, you're talking this, and I read online the other day. I don't know, an article came across. So what are your thoughts on like neutering or spaying your dog, your hunting
Sure.
dog? If you don't plan on breeding them and going down the breeder line and all of that fun stuff, what are your thoughts on like? Is it too early? Because my dog's 7 now, and it doesn't
Sure.
matter what I call the vet about. They always ask me to schedule to get him neutered, and I'm like, no, it's not happening. It's 7. We're
Yeah,
7 years into this. It's not happening now.
I wish I had a good answer for that specifically, like that scenario you just said. For me, just through, other colleagues and folks that I've looked up to and gathered and, taken information from, if it were, let's just say I did, right? I wasn't going to do anything with like let's say my male, like one of my males. I wasn't going to do anything. For me, I would want to wait till at least 2 years old to do something
Yeah,
as far as like neutering or whatnot. For me, all of my dogs are intact. I haven't altered or, changed them. I am not a proponent or in support of, yeah, you should neuter. Do I think there's certain cases that it might be suffice for, someone's scenario? Sure. But a lot of times where I hear it, believe it or not, is in behavioral cases. And the
mm,
folks will say, "Oh, well, my male dog is aggressive and marks everything. If I get him snipped, will it change anything?" No, not at all. Not at all. That
gotcha.
dog
Yeah,
that just needs to learn.
well, I mean, they said they cite that it's health reasons and this, that, and the other, and oh well, he can develop cancer that way, and I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I can develop cancer that way too. I mean, I'm not going to go get neutered, so why would I do that to the dog? You know,
Right.
I
Right.
just,
Right.
and then there was this article that came out that said it's actually unhealthy for the dog even past 2 years old. So they're lacking those natural hormones that are produced, and I don't know. I thought you know, I didn't really get into it that much, but it's interesting to see different people's opinions. But you mentioned colleagues, so I'm sure you've seen like the Gun Dog book, right? And you've got Chris Aiken, and you've got Larry, and you've got all these big time dog trainers out there. There's that guy. His name, I think his name's Bob Tebbins, is pretty famous on the shore for training Chesapeakes. I think he moved recently
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Turtle
South.
Creek. Yep.
Yeah, Turtle Creek. Yep. Um, who do you like if you had to suggest and someone's like, look, man, I want to train them myself, what's your go-to retriever program that you would recommend to somebody outside of just them giving you the dog?
As far as for young dog stuff, I actually really like a lot of it's called From the Pup Up. It's by Pat Nolan. Has
Okay.
a lot of really good just from start to finish. He's now done some stuff with like the e-collar conditioning, and he does a lot of what like I do, right? Training in drive, right? Collar conditioning, but training that in within drive, right? That reinforcer through the play or the work that the dog's already in that like, man, this is the coolest crap ever, and teaching that dog essentially through like a structured game, structured play
Yeah.
to really just thrive and love the work. He does a lot of really good stuff. I enjoy him. Somebody that's not in the gun dog space that I've learned a lot from, and part of how I incorporate what I do and stuff in the training. Um, huge, huge help to me, and just a great guy that call a friend now, but his name is Larry Crone, and he's the owner of what's called Pack Masters Dog Training,
Hmm.
and he pretty much mainly deals with the absolute, worst behavior case dogs that are out there. He does a lot of, dog and owner private stuff. He does do, like your board and train, but he was a really, really great resource for me, and I've definitely implemented and picked up a lot from him for sure.
Hell
Great
yeah.
question, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. I used Bill Hillman's. That was Bill Hillman, and then we've always had a copy of the Gun Dog line around here. That's like traditionally everyone's go-to, but I used Bill Hillman, and then the best piece of advice I ever got in training a dog is that if you want a dog to be good, you got to take them every time you go, and you got to kill shit over them. Like that is just rule number one in training a gun dog. But yeah,
Oh yeah, and no, I've utilized, so yeah, I'm kind of a hybrid as far as like my actual flow chart, let's say, so to speak. Because I like some of the stuff that Bill uses. A lot of my like yard work and into T work and swim by, that kind of stuff. I do a lot from a guy named Jim Van Agen, which is
yep,
Right Start Kennels. And then also a really close friend of mine that I had the opportunity to, train with in South Carolina. His name's Buck Shope. He's a real high caliber field trial trainer, and great guy. Him and his significant other Tara,
hmm
great folks, super super nice people, and they he has a book actually. He gave me a copy. Um, Not sure if he still is publishing or has copies or not, but he's a great trainer as well. I've learned picked up a bunch from him as well. He mainly does field trial dogs, but you know, to be able to get to that level anyway, you have to have all the basic stuff in place. So,
yeah.
but
I've
yeah,
noticed
he's
that that dog training world's a pretty close knit group. Everyone seems to be close and friends, and learns from each other. It's kind of funny from what you see. It reminds me, especially of the hunt trials, a lot of like calling contests where
Hmm.
you guys are training dogs throughout the off season to go take them hunting, and then that you're in these fake hunting situations, which is pretty much exactly like contest calling.
Yeah.
But man, we've taken up about probably 30 more minutes of your time than we
Yeah.
initially set up, man.
oh no, man,
And Micah,
this is good.
I really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna have to have you on again. It's
Yeah, for sure.
because like I said, we didn't even talk food. Like
We'll get to that.
I
We'll get to
wanted to
that one.
talk dog food, but we've been going at this for an hour and a half. So, Mike, you got anything else you want to ask Micah, or do you want to send us on?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, Mike, I appreciate you being on. It's always good to hear something new. We haven't really had anybody that has come on and talk dog training, but obviously, being primarily waterfowl focused podcast, there's a lot of people that have dogs and, are working with dogs and stuff like that. So it's good to hear some pointers and some different points of view, because there's obviously a lot of different ways to train a dog, and there's a lot of different ways to train a dog successfully, and there's also a lot of different ways you can, kind of ruin a dog too, and a guy needs to recognize both sides of that coin. Um, they're both equally important, right? Not only how to have a good dog, but how not to ruin my dog that I've spent so much time with. And as much time as you put into them, you can kind of offset all that good time with just, like we talked about, bringing them on too early and then just having total chaos of a hunt for their first time could erase weeks and weeks of, good solid foundation training. So yeah, we
Oh
appreciate you
yeah.
being on, and we'll get you on another time. We'll go over some of these other questions we have. So Teddy
Yeah.
and Matt, thanks
Well,
for being on as well. Go ahead,
Micah,
Matt.
tell everybody, anything that, any closing remarks or stuff you got going on, where people can find you and ask you questions and
Yeah.
that whole deal.
Yeah, for sure. If I had some words of advice, let's just call it, for folks, people that are just starting off, new to this, new to having a dog, first dog, that kind of stuff, something I would say is just take your time and don't be in a rush, right? There's there's no need to rush. Take your time, enjoy the process. I know people say that, like it's haphazardly or whatnot, but really just take your time, enjoy the dog, really just focus on just building that relationship with the dog, and the rest of that stuff just comes easy. Don't in the young dog work especially, don't be afraid to just go back and simplify, right, with the dog. If you're having troubles with something with the dog, if you seem like there's some sort of confusion between the dog and you know, drop back and think about why. Like why is the dog confused? Why aren't they understanding? And beside that, just have fun doing it, right? Um,
Hmm.
as far as finding me and my platforms, that kind of stuff, if you want to find me on Instagram or Facebook, simply it's Chesapeake Fowl Kennels, and pretty much most of my content is there. I don't have a website, at least as of now, but
I
I
know a
do
guy.
fair. Yeah, guy.
Yeah, I know a guy.
Yeah, he
Right.
sucks.
Right on. But yeah, most of the stuff I stay fairly up to date and posting some stuff. And if anyone ever has questions, just wants to ask me something, or just wants to chat a little bit, dogs, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you however I can.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys, for being on. Thank you for everybody tuning in, and thanks for listening to another episode of The Hail Call.